Ooh. Ooh.
Hey man, what you doing?
I'm fucking working out. What's it look like, grunt?
Whoa, dude. No need to be so harsh.
Sorry, man. I was trying to reach peak physique.
I understand. No worries. This would be enough.
All right, we're trying this again, guys. My video was corrupt the last time I tried it, which sucks. I had some good footage. But I'm Jay, and this is Always Late, the YouTube channel. If you're new here, welcome. If you're returning from the Marvel games video, that's awesome. Thank you for the support on that. So, growing up in the early 2000s had this neat little perk to it that gaming was on the rise. It was an innovative time period. It was experimental, a lot of risks being taken, and I feel like no console really represents that better than the Xbox 360. Say what you want, maybe you're a PlayStation fan, but the Xbox 360 just stood out like no other at the time. You know, there was the GameCube, which is an amazing console, don't get me wrong, but 360 just holds a special place in my heart. And that era was home to some really badass, unique shit. None other than Gears of War really stands out to me more than anything else. And I know what you're saying. But Jay, what about Halo 1 and 2, man? What about Halo 1 and 2? All right. Maybe you're just forgetful, or maybe you're spoiled, or you weren't born at that time, so you don't know. But Halo 1 and 2 were on the Xbox original console, not the Xbox 360. I think later on they got versions of the 360, but they weren't on the 360 when it initially launched. If I'm not mistaken, let's see here. Halo 2 released in November 2004. And the Xbox 360 console launched in November of 2005. And let me tell you, when it did, it was desperate, man. It needed something to tell people, say, hey, you got to buy this console. Like, this game is the reason you're going to buy this console. Especially because it had this whole year sort of head start to convince people of that before the PS3 would launch, which I believe it launched, November 2006. And when the PS3 launched, it was either going to be something that's going to kill the 360, kill that console, or it's going to, be an equal competitor. And the 360 launched with something of like 18 launch titles, where like 8 of them were sports related and 3 of them were racing. So, not too much variety, but there were some pretty cool ones in there, like Burnout Revenge, I think. And then there was a little game that's dear to me called Gun. I think there was also a Tony Hawk game, so it wasn't all bad. It just wasn't all amazing either. Especially because the 360 needed a game that was going to sell consoles like no other, and it was going to rake that money in. That way Master Chief could buy that Cybertruck. Gears of War, it's the one that did it. There were other games that came out in 2006, not a lot. 2006 was a slow year. None other than Gears of War is really it was the best-selling game of that year. Sorry, Oblivion wasn't it. Sorry, Todd. It just, it wasn't no Skyrim, basically. And I think one thing that really had it going for it, Gears of War, is that it was this unique, innovating IP that no one had heard of, but it was getting backed heavily by Microsoft. They published it, Microsoft Game Studio. Gears of War was created by Epic Games, so you might know them because of Fortnite, Of course, everyone knows what that is. Gears of War would eventually become this best-selling franchise that sold out, getting comic books and board games and stickers and all kinds of things. it also got pretty fucking sloppy drunk and stabbed and left in an alleyway to bleed out because of a few cents in a chocolate milk.
It's 207. It's 207. You're gonna pay? You're holding up my line.
I don't have 2 cents.
You can't afford your milk. Just step aside. But Daddy didn't give you enough milk money today?
It's 2 cents. We're talking about 2 cents.
Just step aside, kid.
Uncle Ben. Call an ambulance!
But yeah, so we got this sexy piece of 360 hardware and a steamy game here called Gears of War, and I know the burning question on everyone's mind is what's so good about it? So I briefly mentioned before that there are two versions of Gears of War 1, and it's because Gears got a remaster called the Ultimate Edition in 2015. So for the purposes of this video, I'll be discussing core elements that are found in both games, but I'll make it a point to refer to which one I'm speaking about if it's, important. For the most part, just assume I'm talking about the 2006 version, even if I'm using Ultimate Edition gameplay. I'll make sure to differentiate the gameplay with some small text on the footage, and just so everyone knows, this footage is captured on an Xbone One, and it's because I am too lazy to get Game Pass right now and play it on my PC. So here we go. So like any new movie, show, or game, the viewer/consumer is skeptical, and rightfully so. Why should I spend my cold hard cash on this product when I could get a 20-piece chicken nugget from McDonald's? It takes skillful marketing to portray what is worthwhile about a product without revealing all of the cards. We see today games have multiple trailers. It gets a teaser, an official announcement, the story, the gameplay, release date, updates, DLC trailers, all kinds of trailers. For Gears, it was simple yet a difficult task nonetheless because they were a brand new IP. They had to sell two things, the setting and the gameplay. The Mad World trailer definitely does a good job alluding to the desolate world that appears similar to Earth but is different in many ways. Marcus is the only character featured here, but he is running from Locust until the trailer ends with him facing a corpser with a desperate look on his face. It beautifully captures the feeling of the setting, but not entirely the aesthetic of the game. Gameplay had a demo and a showcase from Cliff Bleszinski, and that seemed to be enough to get people enticed, but we will get back to the gameplay later because we aren't finished with the atmosphere, you silly little goose. The game jumps locations a few times. You go from the inner city to the outskirts, where you meet a small settlement of survivors, then you jump to a mining facility, to an academy, then all the way to the main character Marcus's old home, through a different part of a city, ending the game on a train. So you got a nice little journey there. Each location feels uniquely different while still feeling connected in the sense that this is what has become of the planet called Sarah. Compared to other bleak settings in games from around this time, like Fallout, Sarah stands out because it's not outlandishly different from Earth. Things are familiar and similar, yet very foreign. Everything has this faded luster that society was once at a height of culture, or at least on the rise. There's technology, large metropolitan areas, and a large military. There's also something to be said about the representation of government. Just look at the courtroom and its statues, clear influences from Greek and Roman society. This is a society that values strength, that of the Spartans of old. So why'd it go to shit? Well, even the best of things can't last forever. Everything is kind of centered around emulsion, which is a yellow liquid resource that everyone wants, and it led to many conflicts/wars. It's oil, man. It's oil. The US is going to show up for that shit. Everything is the way it is because of an event called Emergence Day, or E-Day. So we got A-Day, D-Day, E-Day, H-Day. Any other days I should worry about, A?
That's not funny.
E-Day is when the Locust arrived on the scene and started fucking everyone up, presumably because of all the commotion upstairs and the greediness / overproduction of emulsion. If you look around, there's actually propaganda about the sightings of Locust and anti-propaganda about emulsion. The game starts 14 years after E-Day, when most of humanity has been wiped out except the COG, which is our military faction / government. This time skip explains the rust and growth of plants except for when the COG are dropping satellite lasers down on cities and civilians. You gotta love it. And that's also why I believe this setting feels more unique than, say, some others, because the choice to have an apocalypse but center the perspective on a military faction is interesting. It's like playing a Fallout, but you see everything through the eyes of the Brotherhood of Steel. This mostly works though because you are a grunt on the ground. Marcus Phoenix, the main character, isn't the chosen one. He doesn't have some special power in his bloodstream. He isn't a super high-ranking officer with knowledge nobody else has. He's just the son of a guy who knows a thing or two and is trying to fight the good fight like anybody else. That being said, he is a natural-born leader, so good thing he ends up as sergeant and gets to call the shots of the group. This world could be a boring wasteland if it wasn't for the band of brothers that are traversing it. Dom is the loyal friend, Cole is the funny badass, and Baird is the smart guy that sometimes competes for the leadership but never will be the leader for a, good reason. You know what kind of archetype I'm talking about. And together, they are Earth's mightiest heroes. No, that's not right. The A-Team? No, they're just a great group called Delta Squad. That's it. And let me tell you, Delta Squad is fucking jacked. I think even people who have never played Gears recognize the game based on the thick, masculine Spartan physique all the characters have. I'll also say that the banter is A1, which is a staple of any squad of military grunts.
Hi, boys. I can smell you two a mile away.
Screw you, man. Get down here and see how much you like it. There's room for one more. It's a fucking party down here.
No thanks. Keep moving. We'll see you at the carts.
Look no further than Battlefield Bad Company, like 2 years later after this game. But just because this is a military thrill ride doesn't mean this game doesn't leave room for some seriously creepy horror segments. The Locusts are bad enough in the daylight, but at night, in confined spaces, fucking terrifying. So, you got a good setting, good characters, and lastly, good conflict. Because the Locusts are a worthy adversary with a large variety of enemy types. You got drones, wretches, which fuck wretches, man. I hate those wretches. Get the fuck out of here. But there's also boomers, berserkers, krill, corpsers, cedars, and nemesis. And even more than that. Better yet, all of these Locusts are organized very similar to the COG, with generals like General Ram in the first game. It makes it worthwhile to keep exploring because you never know what you might face next, and that's also very nerve-wracking. These Locusts differ from the typical enemy because they're not brainless, but, they're also not human, so they're just terrifying and organized, and it's like, they kind of look like zombies, but they're not. Whatever, you get what I'm saying. All of this is wonderfully wrapped together by the classic score of music, featuring hard percussion, consonant strings, all of which is complemented by dissonant electric tones. Kevin Ripple, I think, is that how you say that? Did the composer for this, as well as the Unreal Tournament games and Aliens Colonial Marines. And man, is this fucking soundtrack funky, creepy, and action-packed when it needs to be. Even just the main menu music sticks with me to this day. Alright, so atmosphere is cool and all, but what about the other half of the equation? I mean, how does this game actually play? Third-person shooters weren't unheard of. Camera over the shoulder kind of thing, and man, does Gears opt to have the shakiest of cameras for maximum motion sickness and nausea. I actually got a headache while playing this at one point, but I'm not going to fault the game for that. It's stylistic choice, whatever. However, where Gears of War innovates is that it really is the first notable cover shooter. Alright, what's a cover shooter? Well, a cover shooter is pretty self-explanatory and pretty simple. You take cover behind some protective barrier and then shoot from said cover. That being said, Gears did it mostly first and did it best. The mechanic of snapping into cover is very satisfying, even more so when you glide a short distance to do so. This is especially good because cover really isn't optional either. Just try to fight Locust running around. It's impossible, at least on the higher difficulties. And that makes it very annoying when snapping into cover doesn't work the way you want. Sometimes you dive instead of, snapping into cover, even though you are right next to the cover you wanted to snap onto. But I can look past it no matter how annoying, because it's just an every once in a while thing. If cover is too far away for you though, you gotta sprint, and Gears of War has a rather unique sprint mechanic, to say the least. Your character hunches over, ducking from enemy fire, and heavily dashes in short spurts before running out of breath. I think this sprint mechanic helps sell just how heavy the game feels. I'm this massive guy in fucking heavy ass armor. Sprinting should probably take a lot. These guys don't take a bathroom break or shower once throughout the entire game, so I would hate to think what these guys smell like under all of that, and I personally wouldn't volunteer to be cleaning the armor. But, basically movement is fine. It's nothing crazy. It's satisfying when it works, but it's not always reliable. So what about the other half of cover shooter though? That being the shooter part. Well, gunplay is good in my opinion. When you are in cover, if you don't aim, any gun is inaccurate with a wider spread of bullets, and it evokes this intense battle feeling. However, if you aim, it's just a matter of handling recoil. I don't think aiming is ever really a problem except for when you are maybe using a sniper and you get hit by a bullet, which sort of staggers you and throws you off your aim. This happens with any weapon, but the sniper is especially the one that it, hurts the most with. Speaking of which, the guns are definitely another reason Gears of War is so iconic. Namely, the Lancer. A chainsaw assault rifle hybrid. Ooh, baby, yeah. This gun makes it in the Hall of Fame next to Halo's AR and the AR from Aliens. I always wondered why the Lancer is really the only weapon hybrid in the series, at least in the first two, but oh well, the Retro Lancer in 3 is pretty awesome. Other weapons in this game though include the Gnasher shotgun, Hammerburst AR, Snub pistol, Boltok pistol, Bolo frag grenades, Boomshot grenade launcher, the previously mentioned Longshot sniper rifle, the Torque bow, and the Hammer of Dawn. This series would later expand its weaponry, but this is pretty much it for the first game. And it's honestly a solid lineup. I constantly got stuck choosing between weapons because I wasn't sure of what I might face next. Really, the Lancer is so good that it is kind of a staple, and unless I'm desperate for ammo, it always stayed in my inventory. So you're mostly always choosing your secondary. The pistol option is kind of meaningless. I didn't use it too often. Snub pistol came in clutch a couple of times, but if you aren't picking the Boltok, what's wrong with you? Revolvers are always the coolest option. The only primary weapons I personally dislike are the Hammerburst and Hammer of Dawn. Hammerburst just doesn't pack a mean punch. It kind of saves you in a pinch a couple of times if you're out of ammo, but the Hammer of Dawn is sort of disappointing. I'm calling down a satellite laser from the sky. This should be wrecking enemies the way it wrecks me when I stand too close. But unfortunately, it feels more like a laser pointer at times. Maybe it's just the enemies, or maybe it's the difficulty I'm on. Either way, it sort of just wastes a slot for some scripted moments. Alright, but if you aren't shooting, you are probably meleeing a wretch, or you're too close to comfort to a drone, and you gotta back them off. The chainsaw half of the Lancer, albeit cool, doesn't land the way I remember it used to. Maybe now that I'm older and playing on harder difficulties sort of dilutes it, but when I'm getting shot at and can only pull off one chainsaw kill without dying, it kind of sucks. I would often walk up to an enemy trying to chainsaw them, but because of the stagger effect, you don't ever get to pull it off, which means a Gnasher shotgun drone can one-shot me in a matter of no time at all. Some segments have packs of wretches that swarm you, and if you try to chainsaw them, you will die, unless you save it for the last one and opt to shotgun and melee the rest. So melee is cool, but you don't really use it so often in the campaign or on higher difficulties. But I mean, it's not like you're running out of ammo and need to melee, because this game isn't a resource or inventory manager, say, like Resident Evil is. I never struggled to find ammo. And I think it's because this game understands that fun is achieved when you are hurling everything you've got at a wave of enemies, reloading like a QuickTime event to deal extra damage, or failing and paying the price. Why more games don't have reloads like this, who knows, but it's badass and fun. As I mentioned a while ago, you travel with Delta Squad, and there's actually a gameplay mechanic that lets you command the group. So you can order them to regroup, ceasefire, or attack. Except I found this to be very unresponsive and unhelpful. Delta kind of just does whatever it wants, no matter what. And Delta loves to get in the way, leading to that red screen you'll come to love, or they fuck off and are no help at all. If anything could have used some tweaking, it would have been this leader aspect. If there was even an option to just not have support at all, I think I would have preferred that at times. So your typical level proceeds like this. Enter area, emergence holes pop up, or you run into enemies, kill them, move on. You can close holes early with grenades to try and progress faster, but you don't really need to half the time. And this gameplay loop repeats about 2 or 3 times before the level ends. Occasionally you'll fight a tougher enemy, which sort of acts as like a mini boss, maybe like 2 boomers that one-shot you, or a berserker. The berserker will typically have you use the Hammer of Dawn in a lot of scripted sections. Otherwise you'll be in a situation with the god-awful turret that is inaccurate as hell, and have to like kill a seeker or something. If a new enemy is introduced, they get a cute little moment to shine, or at least the wretches did. And this game does switch it up from time to time by having you choose which path to take, splitting the group in 2. It's not a major choice and it doesn't affect the ending, but it does make me feel in charge and sort of makes me forget that this is a linear game at times. Where I think Gears of War really shines though, are the moments where it slows down and leans on its horror elements. There's a section in the game that has you shoot like propane tanks to stay in the light and not get picked off, and that is a really awesome horror segment. There's also a section where you travel through the mining facility and you have to avoid these lambent wretches, and that was probably my favorite part. There's also a car segment that is meh, but props for creating a section of the game that differs from the rest, even if later it would show up in every video game ever like this. At least Gears of War did it early before it kind of got saturated. So yeah, Gears shakes things up just enough that the main gameplay loop isn't boring. I replayed the game over the course of 3 days, playing a couple hours at a time, and never really felt forced or bored. I think 5 acts is a good amount of time. Any longer and the game would have started to fall apart and wouldn't be nearly as replayable. Especially because the actual boss fights were pretty disappointing. The boss fights generally have you shoot a specific point on the boss's body as if it's target practice, which is just kind of lame. The last boss fight consists of a need to disperse krill using grenades or the torque bow in order to deal damage, all the while General Ram has this massive double barrel AR. Go fuck yourself, dude. I hated this boss fight. And sure, you could say get good, but nah, dude, this just was not a satisfying fight at all. They kind of, make General Ram like the main antagonist almost throughout the game, but at no point did I really feel like he was different from any Locust. Anyway, if you don't enjoy the main gameplay loop of cover, fire, run, then nothing is going to redeem this for you, especially not the story. So the story of Gears of War 1 is very simplistic and to the point. Marcus Phoenix is freed from prison by Dom Santiago under COG orders. He was imprisoned for going AWOL so he could try and save his father. This helps establish 2 things. 1, Marcus is a guy who will do whatever he has to for what he thinks is right, / the mission even if it's his own mission. 2, that Dom is his loyal friend. The 2 rendezvous with Delta Squad member Carmine and the leader Kim. Their mission at the beginning of this game is to find Alpha Squad and get the MacGuffin device called the Resonator, which is going to chart the Locust tunnels like a map so they can later blow it all to hell. Well, 4 is a bit of a crowd and Carmine dies because he got a haircut, and this ends up being a recurring joke for the series where Carmine usually dies, And well, later Kim shares their fate. But they recruit the surviving members of Alpha, which is Augustus Coltrane, who was a fan favorite, honestly. He's my favorite character. And they also recruit Damon Baird, who I said before is the smart guy, and later is the main protagonist of his own game. So now Marcus is in charge of the Suicide Squad, and they get a car from one of Dom's old connections in the inner city. And we see in that inner city section how people really don't like the COG, as I mentioned earlier in this video. Partially because of the way that they treat civilians. You'll hear them talk about them as stranded, so it's definitely this outsider perspective, but also because the COG, rains hell with Hammer of Dawns on cities, deeming them not savable. After the car breaks down, they go through the mining facility into the tunnels and plant the resonator. Well, it would be too easy to work like that and the device fails to gather enough data. So what now? In a miracle turn of events, Baird shares with the group that there is a larger map in dear old dad's lab back home. That's Marcus's dad. So they cut through the academy, retrieving the data. Now it's time to get that bomb, and guess what? It's on a moving train. So they skirt through the city, eventually making it on the train, fighting off Locust the entire way, and then killing the leader of the army, General Ram, who is this big Locust baddie who has been eavesdropping on us all game trying to stop our plans. Well, they fuck him up, like I said, and upload the data, then launch an Oppenheimer called the Light Mass Bomb, saving the day. Yay! They saved the day. All Locusts are dead. Not really, though, because Mommy Queen Locust is a little upset. We remodeled her home, and it sets up the next game. That's it. That's the story. It's pretty much just, here's a reason to get from point A to B, and the more interesting points are hidden in the background, like Marcus's imprisonment and Dom looking for his wife. But hey, I'm not complaining because that's what sequels are for, and they definitely delivered. But we'll talk about that probably in a later video. I would be remiss if I didn't even mention the multiplayer for this game. Xbox 360 era may have many amazing single-player titles that shaped its generation. However, multiplayer was honestly a large facet of that as well. I'm sure many involved in Xbox at this time remember fondly the friendly place that was Xbox 360 voice chat. There was no Discord to hide in. It was all in-your-face bullying, and if not, some big brother type person would trash talk for you, and it was amazing.
Man, you fucking suck at this game.
Man, shut the fuck up, pussy. Suck my dick.
Man, I'm gonna lick your asshole.
I'll do you one better, cuz. I'll suck your dick. I'll suck your dick till your toes curl, cuz. Don't play with me. Oh, my mama, boy. Yeah, cry. Cry over the microphone. I love it when you cry over the microphone. I love that shit. Yeah.
Gears multiplayer didn't change much in its gameplay. It was still a cover shooter, but man, the way people would snap around flicking shotguns and snipers was crazy. It was all done in like team deathmatch, usually of COG versus Locust, which was really fun being able to play as Locust. The other multiplayer aspect was couch co-op, or online co-op. And I gotta say, co-op is how this game was meant to be played. You would play through the campaign with a friend, sitting back, fighting the good fight. Maybe it was your sibling or your cousin, whoever it was. It was the shit, man. Certain segments of the game honestly feel like it was meant for this, especially the segments where Delta Squad would split, choose left or right. It was meant for a second player. I'm not going to spend a large amount of time comparing the 2006 version of the game to the 2015 remaster, because it's like apples to shinier apples. This isn't a Dead Space remake situation where they altered certain segments of the game, at least as far as I could tell. The game honestly feels the same, and the spirit of the original is intact. The violence is still there, the blood's still there, everything just looks a little prettier with better graphics and actual cutscenes. Graphically, I'll say the 2006 version is darker and grittier, with a more muted color palette, and Marcus and Dom look older and more worn, like they constantly just got out of a battle, whereas in the remaster they look younger and cleaner. Either way, it just boils down to preference for style, but it's hard to argue with the amazing graphics that the Ultimate Edition has. Gears of War left quite a legacy after it launched. It is safe to say any cover shooter afterwards was inspired by it in some way, attempting to recreate that satisfying snap-on feel and gunplay. Such games, in no particular order, include 2007's Uncharted, a PlayStation exclusive about an Indiana Jones-like character doing Lara Croft Tomb Raider-like things. I'm sure you've heard of it. There was also 2008's Army of Two, a contemporary military cover shooter that really focused on brotherhood in arms. And it had a really amazing co-op. Again, this is a game that was meant for co-op fun. And I played this shit all the time during the summer when I was off of school with my bro Spencer back in the day. And it was amazing. So that might be a lesser known one. Additionally, I'll say GTA 4 and Red Dead Redemption going forward into other Rockstar titles really utilized cover a lot, even if it didn't flesh it out as well. And later entries like The Division, Hitman Absolution, and a lot of the Tom Clancy games, especially Splinter Cell, all utilized cover shooter mechanics that were definitely inspired by Gears of War, even if not directly. Just because it isn't a cover shooter, though, doesn't mean it can't be inspired by Gears of War. There are a lot of other games in the 360 era that I think tried to capture the essence, style, or vibe of Gears of War. I previously mentioned Battlefield Bad Company for its use of banter and squad mates, and that one I think definitely took inspiration from Gears of War if you just listen to how the squad talks. Another game, though, is 2011's Bulletstorm, which had similar looking characters, weapons, and banter, and it honestly makes sense because it was developed by People Can Fly and Epic Games together. Gears of War itself has a different legacy, later having a solid trilogy of games, a lesser received spin-off game called Gears of War Judgment, which I mentioned before, that focuses on Baird, and then 2 more mainline games for the newer console generations that people have been divided about, I'll say. There's even a Gears Tactics game that tries to break out of the cover shooter into the strategy sort of gameplay, but I can talk about all those games in later videos. Outside of the game, Gears apparently has a Netflix series in the works with Dave Bautista asking to play Marcus Phoenix, so we'll have to see if we get a success like Fallout or a flop like, well, most video game movies / shows. At least we saw a locust drone in the Ready Player One movie, though, right? So they've already had their big on-screen debut. Lastly, for legacy, Epic Games probably has the biggest legacy out of all aspects of this, and it's that it's got its own launcher, and of course, there's fucking Fortnite. By the way, growing up, I totally did not realize that John DiMaggio voiced Marcus Phoenix, but that's so cool. How cool is it that Bender and Jake the dog voice Marcus Phoenix? It's amazing. All right, so we're at the end of the video here, and originally I wasn't sure if it was going to be a retrospective or, if it was going to be like this overarching look at the whole Gears of War franchise, kind of like the Marvel Games video was, but I wanted to try my hand at like an in-depth review, so that's what this was, and I hope I did it justice, especially just because this game is so awesome, and it was so fun to go back through the 360 era where I'm just so nostalgic for it, and I hope, and at least I think a lot of other people are as well. Just such a different time in gaming that I think we all really long for, and when I was going through my script, I realized just how much I was writing. I hit double digits pretty quick, and I realized there was just a lot to say about this game and just the time in general. So thanks for letting me ramble for a bit, guys. If you have anything to talk about down below, leave it in the comments, and whether it's a suggestion or just like a story about Gears of War. I would love to talk about Gears of War 2 at some point. That game has a way bigger place in my heart than this first game, just because the campaign is that much more bombastic, and horde mode is amazing. So yeah, thanks guys. and I'll see you in the next video, where hopefully I improve and I'll be late to whatever I want to talk about next. So thanks.